Hey, Maruja. I think we're reconnecting after many, many years.
It's been forever. I mean, we saw each other in London for a short amount of time, but
We
that's
did.
already like five years ago. So this is so good.
It's a long
So
time.
so good. Yeah.
But I know you, but my audience doesn't know you. So I have a nice way to catch you a little bit off guard as a
Oh dear.
sneak peek to what we're going to talk about towards the end, especially.
Okay.
I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience with a keynote concert
Ooh, you did catch me
describing
off guard.
yourself. Yes.
Okay. Well, then your audience is my audience, and I'm on a stage, and it's so good to be here. And I just want to be here and open my heart and share my life with you and to encourage and inspire you to know that no matter what you've gone through, no matter what we're going through, no matter where you are in life, you have so much in store and you have so much to give and you can empower yourself. And I'm here to empower you. Maybe not today through song, but through my story to just live out loud and live out your story.
So we're starting out with the living out loud.
Yes.
Your journey actually started out living out loud.
Yes, it actually did. From very, very young. I think you're referring to the music.
I am
Um,
referring to the
yes.
music.
So I started singing when I was very young. My mom and Rudy Plato is to me my Rudy. Was like a father figure to me. They were working together. They were very good. They're very good friends. My mom passed away, so they were very good friends.
Rudy
And
was an artist, right?
yeah, so Rudy Plata is, you could say, one of the legends from Curacao. Like he's got oof, 400 songs possibly.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of tribute concerts have been given in his name, to him. There was a movie that was made and actually went to a number of a film that was made, a documentary, and by Salvin Devint, and fantastic documentary. And it talked about his life, and because he's just his songs are iconic. There's songs like if anybody from Curacao is watching, a song like Atari, Atari Carsauda Bonita, just such a beautiful song, captures our, when the sun comes down. That's one of his gems. So Rudy and my mom were best friends, and they had a children's choir together. They had been doing music for a long time, and they had a children's choir together at called Perditas. And I was 2 years old. This is how the story goes because I obviously don't remember this part. I was 2 years old, and I went to practice with my mom at Rudy's house. And so they would have Christmas shows, especially Laio Capriles, who was the head of the MCB Bank, Maduro and Gurriel's Bank, which is
Mhm.
one of the biggest banks in the Dutch Caribbean. He would always sponsor these Christmas shows by Perditas. So they were preparing for the Christmas show. This was on TV. They were preparing for the Christmas shows, and I was with them at rehearsal. We came home, and I went and sat under the Christmas tree. That's how tiny I was. And I sang all the songs. So my mom calls him Rudy, and she said, "Come, but you can't come in. Just don't let Maruja know you're here." So he comes and he stands in the doorway and watches and hears me sing all these songs. And the decision was made right then and there. You're going to be on the Christmas show. So as that time it was live, it was not pre-recorded. The cameras went like this and then went down to catch me to go back up. And that was actually my start in the music. In music. After that, at 4, I was recording with Perditas, and I was a solo. I was a soloist from that time. And at 6 years old, I toured the Dutch Caribbean because I had won an international song festival. So I was actually like kind of thrown into this world of music, but not thrown in force, but thrown in because I it was actually, I think, yeah, weaved into my DNA.
How far did it go? To
Well, I mean,
where did it peak?
it was remarkable. So I think as a young child, at the age of 11, 12, I had already recorded a number of albums with Benditas. I had been on all sorts of stages. I performed for the Queen of the Netherlands, Queen Beatrix,
Hmm.
the current king's mother, when I was 8 years old with Perlitas, but I sang a solo and met her and sat on her lap, asked her where her crown was because she didn't have it on. Um, um, and that was actually my first time performing for her. I performed for her a number of times as a grown up, but and toured, different islands, and so it was almost like second nature. Being in the studio was like being at home. Being on stage was like being at home. So it was, to say that I had a feeling that this was going to be my life is almost an understatement, because it was just, not only did I absolutely love music and singing, but it just kind of filled me, and to see people's smiles when I sang, and to make people happy. So yeah, and from there, it was like at some point I started going to the States. I started singing gospel. I fell in love with gospel music, and that actually opened a whole new world for me. And working and learning, being musically raised by incredible people in the industry in the States. So a lot came from those early beginnings.
But there was a moment where it all stopped.
Yes. So let me fast forward. I'll try to like speed through, because yeah, from going to the States, I moved to the States, and I was saying, actually I started going to the States from 12, 13 years old, and doing summer school, like music summer school, and staying with this couple that, it's so funny, I'm in touch with them again, and I always say, you musically raised me. But it was like all singing all the time, and they come from a family that all musicians, all singers. Um, Vicky Winans and the whole Winans family is like it's massive gospel music family.
Hmm.
And then and I started singing gospel, recording gospel, won awards, got an opportunity to go to award ceremonies in Nashville in the States, got adopted by another incredible singer, Babby Mason, who was like another, like a mom friend, I call her like a mama friend. And so much happened. Then I went to study. I decided I didn't want to study music, just to give myself something to fall back on, quote unquote.
Hmm.
And when we get further in the story, you'll see that that was a very good thing to do. So went and studied um, film, TV, production and directing, media studies, and then did my master's in broadcast management and marketing. And after my master's, it was like, okay, I'll focus and get this done. And after my master's, really started acting more and sang with this corporate orchestra. So we worked with big companies, and we would do like performances. And one of the incredible opportunities that led to was singing at the Olympic Games, at the
Yeah.
1996 Olympic Games. Fast forward, moved to the Netherlands with a record deal, record an album as a tribute to Celia Cruz.
Hmm.
Greg Elias, who is the one, he's the one who brought, a number of years ago. I don't know if you remember when Cuba opened its doors, and there was a big Rolling Stones concert. It was like when Cuba opened its doors again to
Yeah, I
Americans.
remember.
So Greg Elias, who's kind of like my, I would call him maybe my fairy godfather in a way, because he really had such a big role. He kind of took
It
over
was
where
like your
Amoudi left off.
advocate.
Yes, he was, but he
Mhm.
he he made a lot of things happen for me. He gave me a
Yeah.
lot of incredible opportunities, and he's also behind the North Sea Jazz, or his foundation is behind the North Sea Jazz Festival in Curacao. And through him, I was able to go to Miami and record with incredible musicians and producers. A lot of the people that had worked with Celia Cruz before. So, and here I was after basically a lifetime of building my music career,
Hmm.
um, kind of at the pinnacle of it. I started performing like on stages all over,
Hmm.
sometimes flying, like 3 continents in a week. And at the pinnacle of my career, I guess when you would say, just starting to promote the album, I guess when you would say that, when you reached the height of your career, my
Hmm.
mom had a stroke. She actually had 2 strokes back to back. And yeah. So And what do? Uh, for me, it was when it first happened. I was on stage actually when it happened
Mhm.
abroad, and I had to fly back. And it was, even talking about it now, like the wave of emotions come back. I'm an only child, and my parents have given me all the opportunity in the world, as you can hear from my story, all the opportunity to work and meet incredible people and be musically raised in a way that, like, where their abilities ended, they gave me the chance to learn from those that could take me further.
Yeah.
And so my music career was thanks to them, you know, mainly.
Hmm.
So then how can you now I'm standing at a point because my mom, I mean, in the end, the stroke really, the second stroke specifically, really affected her. Like when I got there, she didn't recognize me, and she could barely speak. Thankfully, that did come back, but she was now bedridden. And my dad, who, it was all too exhausting, so he collapsed. Basically, the two of them were lying in the hospital for almost 4 months. And during this time, there was still some things that I remember. I had to fly for a week. I had to fly to the Netherlands to perform for the Queen,
Hmm.
then fly to Miami to do some promotion stuff, then fly to Latin America for I don't know, some performance or some charity performance, and get back within a week. It was just it was madness. And I knew that there would be no way for me to maintain that, being on the road and having a career and taking care of my parents, because I wanted to be there for them. So I put things on hold for a while, or I thought it was going to be a while.
What was it like every time you'd have to go back?
Did you
We
have?
have, we are always like, there's career,
Hmm.
and then there's our parents, and things happen.
Yeah,
So, this, when you describe wave of emotions, how did you feel every time? Because you said three strokes. That's a lot.
yeah. It was two strokes in the beginning, and then another one a few years later. Um, it's very hard, and I think even especially I think as women, but it could be for men. I'm sure it is for men as well. But I think for women, we really take on the responsibility of our family. We take that on, and as far as caring for, right? Not so. And I think this goes for, and I see a lot of my friends going through it now. I was younger, so it was new to those around me that,
Mhm.
or my peers, to have to care for parents
Yeah.
because their parents were vibrant, and, there was nothing going on there. Um, but I see a lot of my friends going through it now, to have parents that are getting older and sick, and they have to care for them, or they might have illnesses, and I'm so grateful that I can get to be there for them now, and support them in going through that. But also, like, when you have kids, there's always, just the other day, actually, as a matter of fact, and my husband, you know reminded me. He said, there's always going to be something pulling at you, and you might not feel like you're living up to it, because you want to do your best in your career. You want to do your best with your kids. Obviously, you want to be there, but then you're being pulled. And remember, I'm working on something right now, and so there's a lot of work that I need to do for it. And I was thinking, oh, but I need to help Nathan with his schoolwork, and I'm not doing that enough. And so we're pulled in so many directions, and I think it's so important,
But in
to
that
give ourselves
moment,
in that
what I
moment. Yes.
that moment back, you were being pulled in different
Oh,
directions. So,
completely, completely.
how did you choose? Because that moment was that pivot moment where you stopped
Yeah,
singing as much,
yeah,
or you reduced singing. Because I
yeah.
think that was the period I met you.
I think
I didn't meet you
so.
through your music. I met you through actually working out in the gym. I
Yes,
still remember that.
yes.
Um, but that moment when you were doing this, it was a life transformation for you.
It
So
was completely.
you chose then for your family,
Mhm. Yes,
because
because the pool was,
those wave of emotions accelerate you to do that.
well, there were so many things, but what the level of commitment to the career that I had
Yeah.
was so high, and it also meant, and I am a person, if I do something, I want to do it, 100%, if not more.
Mhm.
Um, but it meant being away. I mean, and I had the flexibility to do that I didn't have my own family,
Yeah.
but being away meant, and in the beginning when I had to go and I had certain demands that I had to fulfill contract wise, I hired nurses, and I did have nurses for the rest of my parents' lives, just because I had to, try to juggle everything. But I just, being away and having to go, when you have to go on stage, you have to give so much, right? You have to, energy wise, and you have to, because you're carrying your audience.
Mhm.
And it's almost impossible to do that when your heart is basically somewhere else, because my heart was at home with my family, with my mom and dad. So I had to make that decision. And it was as hard of a decision as you would think it would be.
Mhm.
And it was. I mean, this was like 30 years of working up towards that level of a career. It was almost like it was a no-brainer, because again, my parents had given me every opportunity. It was thanks to them. And these were my parents. They were the closest people to me.
And you're
Um,
the only child, right? As you
I'm an
mentioned.
only child, yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in one way, I had no choice. I mean, basically, even though, yes, I guess I did have a choice. But on the other hand, my heart had no choice. I there was no if there was no if and there were no if ands or buts about it. Of course, I was going to be there and take care of them. You know?
Okay, I have a question. It always strikes me, and I have three sisters, and I'm
Hmm.
lucky because if one thing happened, we all fall back on each other, and you're the only child at this point.
Yeah.
And you become to if correct me if I'm wrong, but you become the caretaker, you
Yes.
become the breadwinner,
Yes.
you had to and you had to let go of something that always believed to be your passion, or not
Yes.
even your passion, your purpose.
Oh
I'm
no.
carrying
Yes.
my audience,
Absolutely.
I'm carrying my voice.
Absolutely, my purpose.
Now
Yes.
all that crumbles away in all that just one fold shot. Did you ever resent that moment or get angry for having that moment? No, it's a bit of I'm
It's a
spinning it on
deep
its head.
question. Yeah, I know, and I appreciate it. Did I resent it? I don't remember if while I was in the middle of it, I cannot remember resenting it. It was extremely hard, and I did not feel understood. Um,
Oh, that's profound. Okay.
yeah, I didn't feel, because a lot of people felt that I should have chosen to let other, like, give my parents the care they needed, and go for my career. There were many that felt that. And then on the other hand, there are many that feel like you're not doing enough for your parents, so you're like, it's never it's never good enough.
That's
um
heavy though. That's either, but how did you
yeah.
get to the middle? Because you stayed. You said
Yes.
earlier in the conversation, you said I stay committed,
Yeah,
and there's
absolutely.
now noise from both sides. How did
Yeah,
you navigate?
it was very lonely. It was very lonely. And I chose not to live in my parents' home, and the reason I chose that, and I had nurses there 24/7. Of course, that costs money too, right? So,
Mhm.
um, and then I have to, I'll come back to what I did later to, to be able to support myself and them. Um, but the reason I did that is because I knew that I had to have a place to come back to reset, so I could do the same thing again the next day. It's like you have to find some kind of place to find yourself and to ground yourself again, because it's you're given and you're given. And my mom became I became the mom, and she became the child in a way, because um even though she was absolutely lucid and as bright and smart as ever, but her emotions were, it's a big emotional world when you're lying there in a bed people are caring for you. You're a smart woman that speaks many languages, has had such incredible things that you've done, and now you're at the mercy of others. I mean, she was going through all those emotional upheavals
Mhm.
internally. And so that was hard to see her going through that, but also, you know, that put a lot of demand on me as well because I was the one that she could express, that with. So there was so much going on. And then seeing my dad, it just, I would try to take him out of the situation because it was exhausting for him to, there was so much there emotionally. And I could not explain that to anybody. Nobody could understand. Just nobody could understand. You did what you needed to do. And so,
But here's something curious, and maybe
mhm,
we're debunking something here.
okay.
People always say when you feel that kind of intensity of emotions, and
Mhm.
they'll say avenue it into songwriting, for example,
Right.
or avenue it in that, and but you just stopped,
I,
or
I,
did you not? I mean,
I did in the beginning. I still performed a little bit, and as life will have it, that's how I met my husband, my now husband, through music, right? But I mean,
yeah.
so so many things happen for things happen for a reason, right? I mean, I would not have been in Curacao had this not happened because I was living in the States, and I would not have met Dean, or maybe I would have, I don't know, but that wouldn't have happened, and we met through music, which is incredible.
So you were
Um,
still singing.
I was still singing, but not on the international level, not as much. I was still singing, but less and less. And I was writing. I remember going to Miami every now and then and writing with Rodolfo, who produced. He's like a brother to me. He produced Asuka, my album,
Mhm.
or the big international album. And I would. They always had their door open for me. And actually, when we get to my story now, he's a big part of that as well. Um, but I would sometimes fly to Miami, take a break, and write with him. So I did have an outlet,
Mhm.
but slowly but surely. And I think obviously I needed to find another way of making money. And thank God that I had fallen, that I decided to study something else because there were some wonderful people that gave me an opportunity as a strategist, a marketing strategist, and a researcher, and I started my research company to begin with as a research company. Got some incredible opportunities for clients that took me throughout the Dutch Caribbean and the Caribbean. And I really was able to position myself as an expert in that field and make a living and cover my parents' expenses together with whatever funds they had. That was a huge blessing. But again, saying, I give 100% in whatever I'm doing.
So that's when the music
Yes,
started
that's
flowing.
when the music started fading. But then jumping for my parents, both, actually, my dad passed away before my mom, which is was a complete shock. Um, but just a few years later, my father passed away, and then my mom passed away a year and a half later. And that was actually from that moment is when and years later now, I can kind of look back and see that what I did is I kind of buried the music with my parents because it was,
That's deep.
yeah, yeah. It's weird because I didn't realize that. And of course, I mean, by now I had my company. I was giving it my all. I loved my clients. I loved the work. I found a purpose in that, you
Mhm.
know. I had my son, my first born was Christian was born. I was pregnant. My dad passed away when I was 5 weeks pregnant, I think, and then my mom passed away when Christian was just before he turned one. But so I was a mom as well. So I had, as I was talking about, you have career, you have. So I kind of let the music slide, but what I didn't realize that there was an emotional tie to letting it go. And we
What was
moved
that
to
emotional tie?
For me, I'm sure it was, well, first of all, there was the pain, the big pain of having walked away from my career because I did walk away from from
It's almost
that
like your
happened.
baby. It's almost like another family member passed away.
Yes, yes, it was. And I think somehow, I- and for years, I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was like I found other ways to find purpose, and I found other ways to, well, obviously my kids, later on we moved to Ireland, I have to say that, 3 years after Christian was born, when Christian was 3.5. And of course, you, in a new country, you have to assimilate, you have to build a life for your son, make sure that he's okay. So there were many things that were taking, pulling on my attention.
Mhm.
And, my family, my husband. So it became easier to put music beside me or behind me. But I also realized, and it was actually Dean, my husband, that called me out on this. He was like, and again, we met through music. Music was our love language, and here I was not making any music. He at some point said to me, "How is it possible? You're a singer, but you don't even sing at home. Like you don't sing." And I didn't sing at all, like at all. And remember, this was one thing. I mean, for years and years, at least 3 hours a day, I would be singing, singing, singing. It was practice, but it was like my soul, right? And I didn't even realize that. I didn't even realize that. Slowly but surely, I also realized that it was almost like there was this, in Dutch you say, een brok in the keel. It was like a
It's
like a
like
knot.
frog, if like something is stuck in your throat.
Yes, like a knot.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I did the work many, many years later, unpeeled, like peeled away all the layers of the onion.
What is the work? You say something like that. I want to
Oh,
know what is the
yes,
work.
yes. I'll get to the, yes, let me
Okay.
get to the work. Okay, so let's just say, life was wonderful. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful. I had my family. Again, I said this, I wrote a blog recently, and I said, I found an excuse in, I had a good run, and I have so much to be grateful for.
Pause. Because I meet a lot of individuals, and I
Hmm.
call them out on this part, which I'm going to ask you about.
Hmm.
We put up a facade. Everything is good. We all feel like this sense of I have to be grateful,
Yeah.
but underneath there's a lot of grief going on
Oh God.
that simmers. I always think
Hmm.
about it like a pot simmering.
Yes.
So we say, okay, I have a lot to be great. It's almost like we're dismissing those emotions.
Yeah. And I was definitely dismissing the emotions. I mean, I
So how did you get to that part?
COVID. Believe it or not, the one thing that was, to many, I think, like, two of the hardest years for
Hmm.
me, was such an incredible blessing in disguise. And here are excuse me, a few reasons. First of all, because I'd lost my parents, I had this terrible fear of loss. Like I would hold on to my family in my heart for
Hmm.
dear life, right? Um, Even though, and in the beginning, there was this panic of, here is really like this fear of loss is actually validated now because anything could happen. But my family was safe between the four walls of our home. And that to me was maybe some kind of deceptive feeling of safety, but it gave me like this sense of security. They're here. I know where they are. They're okay. In the beginning, that was a little panic stricken way, like, distorted sense of peace. But slowly but surely, it became like I started enjoying the time of having them there, and and that peace and quiet that the world all of a sudden had to experience gave room for me to really, talking about doing the work, I really started going deep and like listening to myself and like really trying to understand myself, like what, why did I not, and the music was a big question because I was also um not struggling, but I had this pull on me, like, why are you not, this is a gift, I know it is a gift, I know it, and a lot of people have called me on it, throughout the years that I wasn't singing, like, Maruja, why aren't you sharing your gift? It's not yours. It's, it's something you need to be giving to.
Did you not find that pressurizing though?
Oh God, yes, yes. And so during the 10, 15, I think I took a hiatus, if you really look at it, about 10 years, at least 10 years after my parents passed away, at least 13, 14 years of not really doing anything big in the music.
So when did you start feeling, other than feeling pressurized by other people, when you stopped that noise? Because
When
it's
I,
that's
exactly,
something
when I
that.
stopped that noise, because I was always defending myself. I was always defending myself.
Mhm.
And not defending myself like defending myself, but just, finding a reason or an excuse.
Justifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
justifying. Um, but then I had to really go deep, because there was this little nudge going, you really should be, you really, there, your story isn't over. There's a reason you need to go out there. There's a reason you need to, there is a reason, there is more. And like I said, I had kind of my, and I did achieve a lot. I did have a good run. That wasn't a lie. I did have a lot to be grateful for. So it's like that juxtaposition is really interesting, isn't it? And just feeling or realizing that the fact that I had a good run, the fact that I have a lot to be grateful for, doesn't mean that I can't want more, or that I'm not made for more, or that there is not a higher purpose for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And all these lies we tell ourselves. I'm going to be 50. I'm too fat, too skinny, too old, too busy, too tired, too broke, too not enough. We tell ourselves all these lies. And it, I think I really had to find that Maruja of the past that I'd kind of lost.
Mhm.
I had lost this one that had this determination to go for it, because the fact that I went for this international singing career, that's not, being born on a small island, raised on a small island, it's not just a dream that you naturally dream, So I had such a drive and such a dedication and I still had it, and I still placed it. I had it for my kids, and I had it for, for my business, my entrepreneurship, my marketing career. But that to dare to dream bigger, I had to find that person again and put all the imposter syndrome and all the lies, and whether they're lies or not, maybe they're, well, they are. But I mean, they are lies
Are
when we
they?
tell
Are
ourselves
they?
we're not
To
enough.
me, I don't know if I call them lies, but I feel like we listen so much outside of ourselves
Yeah.
that
But we,
we layer our truth. So
yes,
then we
we
call
do.
it a lie, but actually we're layering it because, and it's from people who care about us.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
But it's
never
also
by
like we
people. Yeah.
we tell ourselves, and isn't it a sad thing that sometimes we tell ourselves these things more than even the people around us? Like, when
Well,
people, when you're blessed, I think I have to say I'm really grateful, for my husband, that he continued to believe in me. He made music
mm,
and put it aside, even though it was very frustrating to him. But I did feel this sense of he still believed in me. There
mm,
were those around me. I have a core of really good people around me, and I'm so thankful for that. That kept saying, "Okay, so when are we going to do this? When are we going to do this?" Talking about the music. When are we? And it wasn't like, when are you? It wasn't that blame of, when are you going to go back there? No,
mm,
when are we going to do this? Which made me feel that I wasn't alone. And slowly but surely, and then I needed to stop. I needed to stop talking to myself in a unworthy kind of way. I needed to start
mm.
finding that self-worth again. And
I
I
always,
think
I
that's what
always,
it
it
comes.
reminds me of what I tell my clients. I always say there's this person inside of you that is you,
Yeah.
right? And then the person outside of you is you, but there's this persona of you.
Yes,
And the
absolutely.
persona of you is turning and has to look at the mirror the naked mirror and look at
Oh,
itself.
I wrote a song that's called In the Mirror about exactly that.
So, and so the child is sitting there, or the girl is sitting there, the girl who got, well, she was grieving. It sounds to me like she was still grieving,
Mm-hmm.
but she had to park the grieving to move on. Because to
Yes.
me, when I think about it, I'm like, only child, you have, who else can you go to? You have to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that girl, to me, it sounded like when you went into COVID, you actually didn't, you went to have a seat with her. You went to sit with her
Yes. Yes.
and have a
And really
conversation
sat
to
with her. Yeah.
ask her, and what do we want from here?
Exactly.
That's what I would tell my,
That's
that's what it feels like that I tell my
and that.
clients, so sit with
Yeah.
yourself.
Yes.
But I
And it's
think
hard to do. It's hard to do. Like to sit with yourself is hard.
there's a way you have to go through it. You can't
Yeah.
just sit with
Yeah.
that self of
And
yours.
that's yeah, and that's exactly what I did. And I think and that's why I say it's so, COVID was such a for me a blessing because it gave me the opportunity
Mhm.
to sit with myself.
Yeah.
Everything stopped. So there was no excuse anymore. There was not a lot of outside noise anymore, unless you went looking for it. Um, and I tended to stay away from social media and the news, and just because I didn't that when I started realizing that here was the pivotal moment for me to actually go deep and like listen to myself. I tried to filter out the noise
Mhm.
and really give myself space. And I knew that the noise was only going to make me more scared, um, more worried, and that would defeat the purpose of, of
So
like
when did you take the first step forward? When did you realize you had taken the steps? Because we never realize we're really.
no, that's true, that's true.
When did you say, "Oh, taken the step"?
So there were a few, like I said, I had a core of really good people around me, but there were a few like gems
Mhm.
of um, the, just a couple of years before COVID. I had it had to do with my work for a client. I worked with a medical laboratory in Curacao, and I had organized a conference for them. And because of the work I was doing in the conference, I got really into the life, the pillars of health and
Mhm.
wellness. And obviously, I had this, my parents. I lost my parents because of illness, and some of these illnesses could have been prevented. Like lifestyle illnesses. Diabetes is a lifestyle illness. A life, yeah. Um, so I had a drive to do better for my kids. I'm not blaming my parents at all.
Yeah.
You don't really know unless you know. Um, and I wanted to be healthy, and so I was doing such a lot of research and looking for a lot of you know answers out there. And also due to my work, I was doing my research for my work, and there was one particular person I had seen a talk by her, and then I caught another talk by her, and she was in lifestyle medicine. And it just, for some reason, it resonated. It really resonated. And I mean, long story short, she has MS, diagnosed at a very young age
Mhm.
when she was doing her rounds, when she, as a doctor. And at 30 something was walking with a cane. They told her in a number of years you're going to be in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Happened to She happened upon research that led her to dig in and realize that lifestyle has a lot of impact. Lifestyle has a lot to do with anything, right? Any illness, but also
Yeah.
autoimmune illnesses. She turned her life around, went plant-based, started exercising, took care of her mental health, the works, and was
My
off the
kind of
crutch.
yoga.
Yes, your kind of woman, absolutely. But just and I remember thinking, oh my God, if she can do that, and with everything that she was dealing with, if she can turn her life around, then I can be healthy. I have the opportunity to really take my health in my hands and just be healthy. So
Mhm.
I started doing the things. I became plant based. I'm like 90% plant based. This was 6 years ago. I, I sent her a LinkedIn message because I heard her speak somewhere that she's Cuban, and I was like, you know what? I sent her a link to the album to Asuka. I said, look, I'm just sending this because as a thank you, because you've been such an inspiration to me. And I shared my story very briefly, and she reached out and said, oh my God, incredible. How can we, where do you live? How can we connect? And so, to make a very long story short, we ended up on a Zoom together, and she said, you know, the world needs your voice. The world needs your voice. You need to, and because also music is medicine. Somebody needs to be, encouraged.
Mhm.
And that really, really, like, it's almost like, this is my belief. I think God, however you see it as the universe, but I think God chooses people to put them on your path, or chooses things to put on your path,
Mhm.
um, to, you know, to make the change, or to make that mental switch that you need.
Mhm.
And that's why I think I always encourage my clients when I talk about entrepreneurship, because they might say, oh, there's so many out there doing this. Why should I try? And I say, because somebody is waiting to hear your voice. Somebody's waiting to learn from you.
But what are you doing with now? You have different, which many women do, right?
Yeah.
We have different pockets of strengths.
Hmm.
We have the bucket of taking care of our husbands or
Hmm.
partners or wives. We have a partner. Let's put it in
Yes.
partner category.
Hmm.
If you are with child, also you have child, you have career, and
Hmm.
and sometimes now it looks like in your case as well, it's not just one career; it's dual careers, right?
Yes.
Reconciliation is now here. So after
Hmm.
all this experience you've gone through, you're reconciling everything,
Yes.
right?
And that was a process, even when I came back.
Well, I
Because
want to go
yeah,
into this process now. You're
yeah,
reconciling, which is leading to what I asked you in the beginning of
earlier.
the conversation.
Hmm.
How are you reconciling both your careers?
So that's a very good question, because it wasn't easy. And I had always kept, it's so funny, not only have I always kept my marketing or my business career on one side and my singing career on the other side. Even when somebody asked me, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a marketing strategist. I have a company. Oh, and I also sing, it
Mhm,
was, or in the past it would be, oh, I'm a singer, but I also, like, um, so those things lived in two different worlds. But after you know after the whole encouragement, and getting back out, oh, and the reason I wanted to get back out there, by the way, because this has a lot to do with it, with where I am today, is because I felt that little voice inside that said, I have a story to share, and I'm that will help somebody, that will help them, whether it's through grief or through whatever it is, that when life happens
mhm.
and you need to pivot, it doesn't mean your story is over, and that's
Yeah.
such a strong um, um, calling on my heart to come out and share my story. um, and so when I started putting out music again, and like ended up on one of the world's biggest stages just last year, with the North Sea Jazz at 52, um, which again tells me that age is just a
Age
number.
is just a number, woman.
Just a number. I'm working with a client now who at 65 retired, is starting her own business, and I absolutely love it. Like, this is what I live for, right? Um,
I pivot. I have to say, when you're talking about it, I pivot mine because everybody still asks me, "When are you going to give a yoga class?" And I'm like, "Okay, here we're going with the same conversation." But I realize I love I'm like a curious child. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
let's test this.
yes,
And so I did. I reconciled. I reconciled everything. And
yeah,
when somebody asked me, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Oh, I have a communications boutique." They're like, "What?"
love it. Yes,
But that's reconciliation. So for
yes,
you, I can understand putting it, but you're reconciling that now. What does that
yeah.
look
So
like?
I have this. Yeah, the way that looks is, I I think, and I want to talk about this, which is a personal brand, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I want to talk about this is because I see that a lot of people struggle. A lot of people that know they want to do something, either moms who now have older kids and they want to go back to something they're
Mhm.
passionate about, or anybody. If you can define, there's somebody, a very famous brand builder called Rory Vaden. He says, your personal brand is the digitization of your reputation. And if you look at the
Girl, you went
reputation,
quick, girl. Say that again.
your personal brand is the digitization of your reputation.
Ooh, okay, go for it.
And 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 when you think about that word, your reputation,
Mm-hmm.
it really is how you show up in
Very
everything
much
you
so.
do,
Yes.
right? It's how you show up. And so, having showed up in everything I did 100%, it gave me the opportunity, and authentically,
Mm-hmm.
it gave me the opportunity to pivot and for people to buy it every time I pivoted. And so I realized that if I just embrace all of that, all those pivots, if I embrace that as part of my story, and that I think is also key, right? Because when you have a story, people are attracted to you. They're attracted to a story, not just you, the person, but this the story that
Right,
brings them to
your
you.
story of resilience, your journey. Yeah.
Exactly. And I realized now, having shared my story with you, the music is a big part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
The business, the entrepreneurship, and the marketing is a big part of that story. The wanting to encourage and wanting to empower is a big part of that story. All of, the mom, the wife, all of this is part of my story. And the best way for me moving forward is if I use whatever platform I created
Mm-hmm.
with all these tentacles to, if I can sum it up in one word, what I would love to do is to empower, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the way I see it. And so it took this reconciliation, like you called it reconciliation. I made myself my client, which
Mm-hmm.
I had never done. And I started thinking about it from a strategic point. And I said, how can I bring, because I don't want to do this separately anymore. I know that the music, I want to use it for this purpose, combine, and you mentioned the keynote concert, which is something that I'm working towards. I feel a calling to speak, but I also have, and I've been writing songs that, like In the Mirror is one of them, that kind of goes, it has to do with my journey. Um, I envision myself, and I'm working towards that, sharing my story on stage interlaced with music. That's one thing. That's one of the facets. Um, for me to be, I've worked with massive companies like HBO, Diageo, really big world brands,
Mm-hmm.
but I've also worked with entrepreneurs and like doctors and music art, like art recording artists,
Mm-hmm.
to help them build a personal brand.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I had to work on myself to build, what was this person, recognize this personal brand in myself. And really, what does that mean? Again, showing up every single time, being authentic. And then, so I thought, okay, if I can teach, so this is another big part of my passion, is taking all the experience of my 20 years of entrepreneurship and marketing strategy and research, and helping people through courses, um, build a personal brand. Yeah.
How do
So,
you reconcile both worlds? I'm still coming back to this question because it's so, I'm curious, how do you reconcile? Because it's two worlds. It's personal branding, and I'm not, I'm so curious. How are you going to do that?
it's just by showing up again. It's showing up authentically as me, and these are all parts of me. So I'll tell you, one of the big things that I did, and again, it like after strategizing for a while, is to separate my music. I put my music website was used to be marujabogaard.com. I have now created a hub. My marujabogaard.com is a hub, and it's a hub of that incorporates everything I do.
Yeah.
And it's basically bringing people into my world. And I say, welcome to my world. I am the multi hyphen.
Mm.
Welcome to my world. If you know me for the music, if you want to know more, you can go, I lead you to the music website. But here's more of me. There's the blog. I'm sharing my stories. I'm sharing how I got here, what the muses and the inspirations that happen for me every day. And then there's the podcast, which is also part of it brings in elements of my music and people that I've met, and being in this being an artist and the process of songwriting. So you get to learn more about that while you learn about other people. But that podcast is also for me a marketing tool. It's a way for me, it's a means for me to show up
Yeah.
and share content. And then there's also on that same in my on my hub, it
Hmm.
tells you about my company, and my company is a way for me to bring the right and the left side of my brain together and play. It's a way for me to, it's my playing field. Because marketing to me it is creative, and I am an entrepreneur at heart. So if you want to know more about that, here's that. But these are all part of my world, and having done that, and it took me a year to really, and it's finally done. But it took me a year to really find a way to make that a synergy, and
Hmm.
it does. And because I've done that, it now all kind of fits together.
It's like
Yes,
multifaceted.
yes, but but also because for me, I now, speaking of personal brand, I now embrace it all as who I am. This is all a part of me, and I think I can serve people better
Hmm.
with the whole of me.
Wow.
And it
What is that one dose of courage that you can share with them?
just, dear, take that step because you are worth it. Absolutely. See
Mhm.
that worth in yourself. You were created for, beauty. You are such a beautiful creation. And um, whatever is in the past, whatever held you back, whatever is holding you back now, you still have a story to live out and live out loud.
Ooh, I
Um,
love
so just know that it's never too late. I came back on one of the biggest stages that I didn't even get on during my, the height of my
during the
music
hustle.
career. Yes, um, at 52. So it's not too late. You're not too old. You're not too fat. You're not too skinny. You're not too busy. You are enough.
All right. So I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your
Thank
life story.
you.
It
Thank
does
you so
take
much for
a
having
lot
me.
of courage as well to share your story and
Yeah.
get into that little deep dive of it.
Oh yeah, you really went deep with me.
Thank you, Maruja.
Thank you.